All right, hello. It's been a while since I uploaded a YouTube video, and but I wanted to start to document this journey, and we'll see how far we get, and we'll see how it goes. But basically, I have been just like thinking about which game engine to use to build a game. So that this video is gonna all be about which game engine I am choosing to start my game development journey. And I'll talk about the tools that I've used so far and the testing that I've done and why I'm picking the tool that I'm picking. So there is no like hard right answer if you're trying to get into game development. And there's still a lot of studios that have created their own custom game engines. So these are the popular ones people sort of know about, but if you look at games like Control and Max Payne and things like that, like they have their own in-house game engine. I think it's called Northlight, where I don't know if I don't think they let anyone else use that game engine. It's something that they've completely developed. So there's more game engines than just this, and people have the option to create their own game engine. You don't need necessarily a engine to make a game, but if you're starting from scratch like me, and you want to ultimately make a game that you can release to the public and that people can play and you could potentially get published on console and PC and Mac, potentially like other platforms, mobile and that sort of thing, then game engine is a good way to get started. Seems like the best way to get started, because you're not going to be having to solve all of the technical problems that are going to arise when it comes to building a game. But it depends on what you want to do, and also like how much time and sort of resources that you have. For me, I want to try to develop something as quickly as possible, and get it out and get it released. Best case scenario, I make some money on it. Worst case scenario, I have an example project to show that I can make some games, and also like hopefully I'll enjoy the process, and other people can actually enjoy something that I've built and created. So I think it's a win-win-win. I'll talk a little bit about my journey here. You're going to see like a static screen for a little bit, but I'll start popping around these different tabs in a second. So I have my journey so far is basically I've been kind of all over the place from my career. I have like a weird journey career. I don't think I need to go through the whole thing, but essentially like I've been very entrepreneurial. I've started businesses, some of which were not successful, some of which were successful enough to exist for years. And so some kind of breaking even kind of situations or making a little bit of money. So I learned a lot of the stuff about running a business, bookkeeping and counting, all the fun stuff and all the administrative things behind running a business. And and all the, whatever, marketing and customer service, sales, everything. So I've been that person, sort of jack of all trades, but I've always focused on from a very technical side. So, like I've been helping, financial advisors use CRM software, customer relationship management software. Help them integrate their systems with their phones, so they have access to their client information, and they can serve their clients better, and that sort of thing. And then I did web development from there. So, creating websites from scratch, but also using various web site platforms, right? So, there's a bunch of them out there, but I've used a bunch of them. And then doing a bunch of other technical stuff, nerdy stuff, networking equipment, running Ethernet cables, that sort of thing. Always very like technical aim. And then I created some digital signage and this whole SaaS application that was basically like a e-commerce platform, so you could sign up for your own website in like 15 minutes, or 5 minutes really, if you just fill out the forms quickly. That still exists, but I haven't been selling or marketing that. So if you hear some crinkling in the background, that's my cat. But basically, through that process of creating my own SaaS application, that's where I really started to get into software development. And I used some things called, let's see, the first one was called the Django Project. I don't know if it's .com or .org. I always forget. It's probably .org. No, that's it. Okay. This framework for building, SaaS applications and websites and things, I really quite enjoy this a lot. It makes a lot of sense to me. And this is based on Python, which is a popular, I think it's actually python.org, popular programming language. So I started first with Django because it was a web framework, and I understood making websites, but Django is made with Python. So in order to really use Django, I had to learn Python. And so that's what kind of got me into software development. And I've done that for the last few years, maybe or more, actually. Time flies. Excuse me. But so, yeah. So I've done some software development, and so this is where I'm at this point, right? So this is my background, and sort of I'm saying this because this influences what engine I am choosing to work with. So you may have very different reasons for choosing a different engine, and I'll try to go through some of these pros and cons from my perspective and see what makes sense. So I'm actually going to start with these. So the first one is I first created a game using this Pygame library, which it looks like, it's still in development here. Like the latest released here is from March of this year, which is only a few months ago. And so, it's like and there's a hackathon happening. It looks like happened. And here's some release notes. So still active development on this thing. So basically, this is like, if you know Python and you want to, or if you just want to learn Python, an excuse to learn Python is why don't I make a game? Because that would be fun. That's how I looked at this. So it was as I was trying to increase my skill in Python because I was doing it for work, I was diving into this a little bit to see how games were made, but also as more practice for Python, right? So if I was, whatever projects I had at work, if I'm working on this on the side, then I might, I'm probably going to learn things about Python that I haven't maybe encountered at work yet, or it just helps me just learn. So that's where I started. I made a little game with this, and it was a lot of fun. And actually, they, when I started working as a software developer, we had certain days that they would allow us, every once in a while on a Friday, you could code whatever you want, and I would make a game. So one of the games I made was essentially with this engine, and then this engine was the other one. So I've already made a video on Ren'Py, so you can actually just look that up on the YouTube channel and see that. So I also made one of these for work on one of those days where it was it was an interesting project, a fun project. And people really responded really well. They got a lot of positive feedback, and it was really encouraging. So if, and the third one, so basically it's if you're trying to just make a simple game and you're trying to get started and from scratch, and you're also interested in learning Python, the easiest way to get started would be Ren'Py. This is beginner. because it uses like, it's not raw Python. It's like uh, it's it's customized to make it easier, specifically to make these visual novel type of games. But you can do a lot more with it, and what's cool about Ren'Py is you can actually publish your games. So once you make something, like you could get this on console. There's plenty of these games that are on, like I remember some of these being on like the PlayStation Vita. Um, this was like, there's a bunch here. Let me see if we can take a look. So anyway, that's just really cool. It's just really cool. If you want to get your stuff over here, yeah, look at this. Like, you can make a game on Ren'Py and then go right to PlayStation 5, for Nintendo Switch, and Xbox. Like, that's awesome. That's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And they're mostly like visual novel games. Visual novels. So you're trying to tell a story, you're very interested in like text, if you want to use dialogue and that sort of thing, like conversational games. Ren'Py is an awesome, awesome way to get started. So there's this. And then, if you want to do like a more of like a 2D platformer kind of a deal, or really like a bunch of stuff. Let me see if I can find some examples here on this. They just gotta have some examples, tutorials maybe, or projects. So like recent projects. So there's actually like, this is not just side scrollers or platformers. This is actually like all different types of games that you could make in Python. So yeah, Pygame's pretty flexible, but it seemed to be, I didn't see a real path to get your game published with Pygame. So like if you're trying to get, I'm not saying it can't be done, and in fact, I do know that there's some people who've made Pygame games that are on Steam. So it is possible to at least like make a game and put it on a store like Steam. So this can still be like a very legitimate path, and also like you're learning Python as you go, so it's cool. And then we have Python Arcade. So the difference between Pygame and Python Arcade is essentially that Python Arcade, like you could just tell right away, the documentation is really good, in my opinion. So if you're trying to get started, like boom, here's some example code, here's some examples for platformers, for shooting games, here's example code and here's tutorials to like get you started right away. And here, let's go see some example games. So this is like, seems to be pretty well updated and has some really cool examples of different games, and has like little effects that you can add, like this, like making it look like a CRT TV, like an old school tube television. It's got some really cool stuff. So basically I guess I started with Pygame, or I can't remember if I did Ren'Py or Pygame first, but I started with one of those two, and then I went over and made a game with Python Arcade, which I really liked. I got pretty far with that, and I thought it was a great little engine, but again, when it comes to like getting your game published to console, like not, there's a bunch of question marks basically when it comes to that. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's it's ever evolving. So who knows? Who knows? It was kind of but for me, this was a question mark of like, would I be able to make a game? But again, if your goal is to learn Python, these two are the absolute best: Pygame and Python Arcade. If you're looking to make a visual novel and you don't really care so much about learning Python, and you're not necessarily caught up on the code, and you want to just do some basic stuff with code, you can use this and publish a game. And like, this is cool because it's like you can run this in the web, you can run it on Mac and Windows, whereas like Python and Pygame and Python Arcade didn't seem to have well, it's a much, 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 much more technical challenge to get something running in the browser. If you were, like, for example, if you created a game in Pygame or Python Arcade. So the fact that this is kind of built in, this is cool. So anyways, these would be the four engines I would say if you're trying to publish a game. Again, you could technically do it in Python, in Python, in Pygame, but you're gonna really need to know Python to make that work. So I'm gonna skip over this. I'm not gonna use Ren'Py for my first game because although it would make sense to do that in a lot of ways, especially if it's a visual novel, but I would say like you have to be a person who's like writing a lot of dialogue, and really concerned with like creating like a very conversational based game. Maybe it's like a story based. It's based on a book, or it's like because you can see like Doki Doki Literature Club, for example. This game was very much like it's like kind of choose your own adventure. Like the characters you hear, the characters talking, the dialogue, and back and forth, and then eventually like you can have choices of things you could do, and then based on the choices you make, you can go to different parts of the story, get different endings, that sort of thing. So if that's the type of game that you're going for, I would say like just go to with Ren'Py. For me, let me go to this because these two are going to have a lot of visual stuff happening on the home pages. To me, or for me, it has come down to three choices: Godot, Unreal Engine, which is this, and it's going to have a lot of visual stuff here, and actually, like, technically, we're going to talk about UEFN as well, because that's specifically what I was looking at in terms. Let me actually click on that because there might be less. There we go. This is a better view. So, Unreal Engine for Fortnite is a version. It's like a sort of, in some ways, like well, I'll get into it in a second. But so we have Godot engine, we have Unreal, and Unreal for Fortnite. That's what I'm specifically going to talk about, and then Unity. So these are the main game engines. I'm trying to find something that just has less visual things happening. Okay, these were my like three final contenders of like, okay, what game engine am I going to use to make a game? Seriously, like, let me get serious about it. What am I going to do? Looking at Unity, it's like Unity and Unreal are sort of like, you can kind of look at it, if you're just a gamer, you could kind of look at it where like Unreal and Unity are like the Xbox and the PlayStation. They're the ones who are like, who have the greatest capability of pushing the graphics as far as they can go. Unreal is really like the I would say top of the line in terms of visual quality. Like if you're going for the most realistic graphics, Unreal is probably the best way. But Unity is like, if you're really good with Unity, you can also do some really, really, really great stuff also. So these are the two most like powerful game engines in terms of visual fidelity. Like, cool graphics, really solid graphics. We're seeing like, here's a little bit of example showing of like just some of the worlds for Unity. I mean, this is like, it's gorgeous. It's absolute gorgeous stuff that you can make with Unity. And with Unreal, what you can do is like as realistic as it can get. I mean, as absolutely like realistic as a game can get. This is probably going to look choppy because I'm using a screen recorder, but as realistic as games get, you can make stuff with Unreal. And Unreal Engine, well, before I get into this, there's a lot to talk about. So those are the two sort of best graphics. You don't have to go crazy with graphics with either Unity or Unreal. You can make a just a sort of pixel game, like a game with pixel art. You can make many types of games with these. So it doesn't have to be something that's super visual and super high, resolution. It's just you could go there if you want to with these. And then Godot is not quite as photoreal as Unreal or Unity, right? Like if you're going for hyper realism, that's probably not, like, not probably, I would say like Godot is not the way to go. It does have the capability of doing 2D and 3D, and there's plenty of cool games that you can make with Godot. Let me just see if, this is going to take me, yeah, we're not going to go to YouTube. So, yeah, here's me because, anyway. So, it's just funny seeing this X, because this is really like the X in Xbox. A lot of people don't know that the Xbox is named after DirectX, which was, I don't know, it's a Windows thing. Anyway, so, really Godot, from what I understand, is like if you're going to do a 2D game or a 3D game, you can certainly use Godot, but it's, like if you're looking at this up here, even if you're trying to go hyper realistic with Godot, you can get pretty good, and it's going to continue to improve, but it's not going to be photoreal. So, okay, so let's talk about Unity first, because I'm going to kind of wrap up Unity pretty quickly. For whatever reason, Unity to me is not the right choice for me, and I don't have a really great reason for that. There's plenty of cool games that have been made with this engine, and you can certainly make a lot of cool stuff with Unity. But for whatever reason, like sometimes it's just like you just got to make a choice, right? You can, if I go through with what I'm going to choose to make a game with, I could choose to change to another engine, a year or 2 years, 3 years down the road, or whatever. And maybe at some point I'll take a harder look at Unity. But as of right now, Unity is not, it's just not for me where it's at. And I do not have a good, solid reason for that. I just don't. I mean, maybe I looked at like some of this pricing and was maybe turned off by some of this pricing models, like if you're just getting started, but also like not necessarily, because you pretty much can get started for free with Unity. It says right here, right? So if you're making less than 100K, like you can use this for free. And then it looks like if you're making between 100 and 200K a year in the last 12 months, then it's $40 a month. So it's really not, it's not bad with pricing at all. I think personally, I remember, I don't know if the CEO or something was talking about Unity, and they were talking about microtransactions, like building microtransactions into the game engine itself. And something about like, there was some quote about if you're not monetizing your game, let me see if I can find this quote. Here it is. CEO apologizes for calling some developers not nice words for not considering like microtransactions like in their game, essentially. So I think, like, for me as a gamer, I've been gaming for my entire life, Microtransactions a lot of times can be done in a really awful way that I really do not like. I find them like offensive. It's just not, not. Uh, they can be really predatory and not always. They can be done in a way that makes sense and is a good experience for everybody involved. And it's a good way to support the companies who are making the games and continue to support games. But in a lot of cases, it's not done really well, and it's done in a way that's like, borderline gambling. you know, so especially when we're talking like loot boxes and things like that. So, I think for me, that actual quote and conversation from that CEO is probably the reason I just really didn't take Unity seriously when I was really starting to look at these game engines. So that's off the table. So now we have Unreal and Godot. Those are like my final two choices. And the context for this for me is that I'm using a 2018 Mac Mini. With that Mac Mini, I was able to upgrade the memory. That was the last Mac Mini that you can upgrade memory yourself. The new Mac Minis that are M1 and M2, you cannot upgrade memory. You have to just purchase whatever memory you're going to purchase when you purchase the computers. And I'm not really trying to spend money on a new computer right now. So I was able to max out the memory with that. But I have also a 512 gigabyte hard drive on this computer. And so the thing about Unreal is that, in order to make these sort of top-end, top-notch games, like I personally would need more hard drive space available and probably a computer with a dedicated GPU, right? And if you know anything about Mac Minis, like they don't really have that. It's like integrated graphics kind of situation. I mean, there is some graphics involved. I don't know if it's like a separate graphics chip in there, but it's not. It's not. I mean, like the most powerful essentially. M1 and M2 Max are going to have a much better GPU performance than my computer has. But again, you're going to have to spend a little bit more money not getting the base model on those. Or if you have a PC with a really great graphics card, then you can start getting into pushing high quality games. So it just doesn't make sense. Like if I don't have a development environment, in other words, like if I don't have a computer that is powerful enough to play the games in the first place, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to try to develop like a photorealistic game using this under Unreal Engine. The other issue is just like my lack of hard drive space. Like once you download, Unreal Engine, then you can download like different version numbers of it. I think it's 5.1.1 is the current version of Unreal. 5.2 is in beta, and it's really really great, really cool stuff. I think at some point I would love to get into Unreal Engine, but for my first game, I don't think it makes sense. The other thing about it is it's free to use the Unreal Engine until the point where you release your game. And if you release your game for sale, I believe that Unreal Engine takes, I want to say that it was 30% of your revenue, but I could be very wrong about that. So don't take my word for that. But there is a percentage of revenue that they're going to take. So again, don't quote me about the number. And let me get off of this page because it probably looks horrible with this screen capture software. However, so yeah, again, that percentage of what they take, it might be much less than 30%. It might be something like 18% maybe, or 15%. I can't remember the exact percentage, but the point is, incredible state-of-the-art tools that you get to use for free, and you can develop your game as long as you want. Mess around with the system as long as you want. If you're looking to get a job in the game development industry, that's like a cool way to get into it, because you can make games with Unreal Engine and then potentially get a job making games with Unreal Engine. So if that was my goal, to get into the industry and work for someone, probably getting into Unreal Engine would make a lot of sense. Same for Unity, but really it's just like, do you know how to make games? Because there's going to be a lot of overlap and similarities with different engines. But what I want to say about Unreal is that it's, regardless of this percentage of sales that they take, in a lot of cases it's worth it when you're pushing the limits, and trying to make a game. Photorealistic type of game, right? A lot of studios that used to make their own game engines are now using Unreal Engine. So it's a really great thing. I'm not saying anything negative about Unreal Engine. I want to be really specific about that. Even if they did take 30%, you probably justify it. But I don't think I don't think it's quite that. I think maybe it was at some point, but maybe they lowered it down. I feel like it's 18% for some reason. But anyways, the other thing about Unreal Engine is they use it for film. So it's like there's plenty of applications that are not video game related that Unreal Engine can handle. So if you're looking to get into like film, commercials, like where you're using cool tech, or you're creating like virtual backgrounds, virtual sets. If you think about the movie the show Mandalorian, or a lot of movies, a lot of TV commercials, a lot of them are using Unreal Engine. So it's just an awesome tool, and I think getting to learn Unreal Engine can really open up a lot of opportunities, for working for other folks. And so for me, I think Unreal Engine is really exciting, particularly like on the film side of things. But right now, like, that's not my focus. So I looked at this. This is something they just recently announced, which is Epic Games. It's Unreal Engine for Fortnite, and essentially what it is Fortnite is a really popular game. Most people know what that is. It has characters that look something like this. It's a what do they call the type of game? Kind of like last man standing type of game, where you all fly in on this like school bus and get dropped onto the island, and it's battle royale. It's called, I believe, where it's like basically like the last man standing, or the last person standing, is like the one who wins at the end. And it's super popular. They've made a ton of money with this game, and it's Epic Games is like, I don't know exactly how to say the relationship, but like it's a way of showing off the Unreal Engine in a lot of ways. Like, here's what you could do with like, here's an example of a great game that you could make if you used Unreal Engine, kind of a thing. So it's kind of a template, but it's also like their most successful game, I think, by far. And it's more than just a game. It's more like a sandbox. And so they've officially turned it into a development environment where you can literally make your own games inside of the game. So you can like walk around inside of Fortnite and place buildings, build maps, customize maps, do all this stuff. So like, this is really, 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 really cool stuff. And this is why I was seriously looking at specifically using Unreal Engine for Fortnite, specifically. And I actually bought a PlayStation 5 specifically for it, because from their keynote address that they did recently, basically they were saying like you could immediately, like after you create the game, you can immediately test it on a PlayStation 5 in real time, and then come back and make changes. And so it seemed like a really, really, really great sort of development environment. And this was my number one choice up until like the sort of very end. And the reason that I unfortunately I'm not going to be using this, even though I think this is like a massive opportunity, and I'm very interested in the Unreal Engine for Fortnite, and I would like to get into it at some point. There's a couple of reasons. One is that, again, my computer is just, I don't really have the space to download the engines and run them. I just don't have the space on this computer. I don't have a computer with a graphics card, so I just don't have the right development environment on the computer side, unfortunately. Even though I could make it work. It wouldn't be sort of an ideal experience, but I don't want to say that you couldn't do it. But it's a little bit of like me having to delete software and delete apps off my computer to make space and that sort of thing. So again, but if I didn't have anything on my computer, I would have the hard drive space. It's just, anyway, so that's the thing. The other thing about it is that it's using this new verse scripting language. So the reason that they call it verse is that it's based on the metaverse, essentially, because they're like a real big, not just believers in the metaverse, but they're actually like creating the tech that's going to underpin like a lot of this stuff. Even though like the metaverse at this point, a lot of people think that it's kind of it's been a fad, or like maybe they look at Facebook and think that it was a failure, because Facebook changed their name to Meta and that sort of thing. And if you looked at the development of the metaverse by Meta, their main person that was developing the VR technology left the company, which was a big deal. And there's questions about it, but long term, I think there's still like huge opportunity in the space, and I think that Unreal understands that, and they're developing like the tech for the future of that. And part of that is they've developed a new scripting language that is sort of like a combination of C++ and Python and something else. And I looked at a tutorial about it, and because I did not start out as a C++ developer, I started out as really like a Python developer through Django. There's just things like lists versus arrays, right? Which are very similar, if not the same thing, except in Python, they're written this one way, but in C++, they're like written a different way, right? And I've not programmed in C++, so I couldn't tell you 100% exactly, but that's basically my understanding, right? And when I looked at the tutorial for this verse scripting language, it seemed like it wasn't Pythonic enough for me, where I would basically be learning a new scripting language, and it's not an impossibility to do that, but I'm just not ready to do that right now. So for all of those reasons, even though again, I think there's a massive opportunity for this. You can basically customize Fortnite maps and stuff like that. It's this is just a huge opportunity, and I think they do some revenue share with this specifically, where I think that they give you 40% of whatever you make, or let me see if we can get some basic information on this. So create.fortnite.com, you got to sign up, and then so that you can get 40% of the net revenue from any items. I don't know. You'd have to read this, but things that you create in Fortnite, you can make money on, and you can also make entire games using the Fortnite sort of sandbox that are not Fortnite. They can be whatever game you want it to be. So this is super, super, super compelling. And if it wasn't for the hard drive space situation and sort of what I looked at with the scripting language, even though you don't need to probably know that much about the scripting language to really create in Fortnite creative, or I mean, you'd have to look into this stuff yourself. But if you're gonna get like super technical, or just getting to like the coding part of creating a game, like I think at some point you would really need to kind of start learning this verse language, and and it could be the future of game development. So, but right now I just didn't want to. It was too much of a leap for me. So I'm going to close these two, and I'm going to talk about Godot. So Godot was on my radar, and I'll try to wrap this up here shortly. This is going a lot longer than I thought. But this is like the amount of thought that I've put into this. And I've also, I've downloaded each of these engines and I've tried them out, and I think I've deleted some of these, but you can see like here's Epic Games, here's Godot. I think I deleted Unity recently because I was trying to make space for the Epic Games launcher, which is what you need for Unreal. And there's also Blender as a part of this equation as well. By the way, this tiled application is what you can use with Python Arcade to edit your maps. So it's really cool. Really, really cool stuff there. But one of the things that's really interesting about Godot is it's super lightweight. Like, to download and run Godot, like you could run it on an older computer with a lot less issue. Like, it's just really, really, really lightweight. Also, like you see 4.0.2, so Godot 4 is a big leap forward in the Godot game engine. Like they've brought a lot of features in that makes this like a much more professional game development environment. And even the CEO of Epic Games and Unreal Engine mentioned Godot in the speech, in his like the sort of Unreal Engine. It was like the state of Unreal Engine, I think they call the thing, if you wanted to look it up on YouTube, where it's basically a keynote address. They talk about what's going on with the features. So like that also gave me confidence in the Godot engine, the fact that they would even mention it there. So there may be some, I think Unreal's trying to be open and work with people. So it seems like it's safe to work with. It's even safer to work with Godot. The other thing is, it's free. It's open source, so you don't actually have to pay a percentage of your income whenever you release your game. You can just release the game, and it's free. You don't actually have to pay anything. You certainly can contribute and donate, but you just can use it, download it, use it. There's no issues there. Like you don't have to worry about paying someone for that. Now, of course, like when it comes to game assets, this is a whole thing, and I'll probably get into this in the future because I'd like to continue to record and talk about my progress and what I'm learning and what I'm doing and what I'm creating with this. But there is like an asset library here, you can tell, but it's like it's not super it's not user friendly, but Unreal Engine is going to be a much like more user friendly experience when there we go. I'm just switching this here to Godot 4. Just when it comes to like their asset libraries and things, like Unreal is sort of superior in that it's gonna have a lot more stuff. So this is like a potential downside on the Godot side. So this is a potential downside of the Godot, side of things. But there's an asset library that I think is called Quixel. Quixel. Let's see. So I know that Godot works with these Quixel, I guess like 3D objects, but a lot of these game engines do. You'll see like mega scans, if you want to get like basically scans of environments to make your environment look more realistic. Or there's like 3D assets that you can have. Oh, look at this. Yeah, so like this is, yeah, like I finally have like zeroed in on the places where like I'm I'm going to say officially like I am a game developer. I'm gonna say that because I'm very seriously like in this now. Um, Anyways, the point is like you'll see this. You'll also see something called Fab, which is like a marketplace that works directly with Unreal Engine. But a lot of these assets, I think you can. Uh, I'll have to look into this more. But basically, like I know that you can get assets in a marketplace that I believe is like this, and I think this is where like Epic is involved in this heavily, but they're keeping the marketplace available for for Godot and other engines, from my understanding. So that would be fab.com is where this would live, and you can see that they're mentioning this Unreal Engine, Unreal Editor for Fortnite. So that I mentioned that wrong. Unreal Editor for Fortnite, not Unreal Engine for Fortnite. So this, I guess, is really like the place to go for digital assets, but I don't know. I don't know if it's in beta or what. I'll have to look into that. Point is that there's going to be just like less probably tutorials and things that are available for Godot than there would be for Unreal. I mean, Unreal has amazing support. I mean, they have like a new tutorial like every other week. Not even every other week. It seems like every day they have a new tutorial coming out. I really like if I had a more powerful computer, I would probably would be doing the UEFN thing. But the other reason that I'm going to use Godot, and ultimately like I'm going to stick to this choice, at least for this next year, or unless like Unreal Engine was getting me some money or something, because they do have a grant program. I think I'm really excited actually to get into Godot, and part of the reason is I've looked at the user interface, I've watched some tutorials, things kind of make sense, and the other thing is that they have their own language also, but it's much more Pythonic than Unreal Engine's version, or UEFN's scripting language. So like as I was watching tutorials about the scripting language with Godot, it was like it looked like Python to me. It just seemed like, oh, I feel like I know this, I'm familiar with this, because it says here like it's inspired by Python and other languages, similarly to Unreal's, but the way that it's written just was much more Pythonic than Unreal's. But that's just from a me looking into it from a very short term perspective. I could be wrong about that, but I just felt much more comfortable personally with this scripting language, and the fact that it's so lightweight. Like I don't have to stress about not having enough space on my hard drive. I don't have to stress about the graphics card at this point. Like I could just dig in and make something, and that's what I want to do. I'm completely I completely understand that it's not going to be the most photorealistic experience, and I am okay with that for this this stage in sort of my game development journey, right? Like I'm going to make it look as realistic as possible, but I'm also going to do that probably with some some tricks and things like that, hopefully to get it to be as photorealistic as possible, but it's just not going to be that. It's just not. And ultimately, like, it's not about the photorealism, it's about the fun. Is the game fun? Is it enjoyable? Do people like it? That's what's really important. So this was a hard decision for me. This was like really, it took me a while to figure this out, and just to get comfortable with like what to do, or just, excuse me, which engine to use. So like, for the first game. So really, like I said, like that was like the last two options I was really looking at seriously. But I would say like really like this or Ren'Py would be the engines that I would actually start with after doing all of my research. Again, because of the Python angle, because of how lightweight they both are, and the fact that you can actually get games developed. So I don't know if this is going to show a bunch of examples without going to YouTube. No, it's not. But you can look at plenty of examples of games that are created with this engine, and the more that I look at it, the more tutorials that I look into, the more I like this. And also, it's actively being developed. Like, it is seriously actively being developed. Here we go. At least we get a little bit of something here. So you can see Windows, Linux, Switch, Xbox. Are these the most popular games ever made? No. Do I know about any of these games at this point? Not to be disrespectful, but no, I don't. But the fact that I know that they have been developed, and even there's some iOS stuff here, it's kind of cool too. So it's a way to get started, and that's what I'm going to do. Like, part of what's difficult is focusing on one thing, and I think it's really important to do that in order to make progress and get something done. And at some point down the road in the development environment, or as I develop the game, certainly can make a different decision. And there's plenty of videos that you can watch on YouTube about people who switched from one game engine to the other and which one's better, and everybody's going to feel differently. So there's really no wrong decision about this. This is very much a personal decision, a personal choice, but I wanted to give enough background of why I've made the choice that I made. If I was more interested in like writing dialogue, I would absolutely just be making a Ren'Py game right now. I would absolutely be just doing that, because that's like the easiest way to get started and get going, and and get published. So, but aside from that, like, I would say like Godot is probably the next best choice for me, and and like there's a lot of hype and excitement about Godot 4, and there is the other piece of the puzzle here is Blender. In the past, I've used Daz Studio, and this is the thing, because it's kind of important to mention this too. So Daz Studio is a website that in this sort of not open source. It's a free piece of software that you can use to generate 3D assets, whether it's 3D characters that you can create and customize, or any 3D objects. And they have a big marketplace of things that you can purchase. And so I've been using that for the last several years, like learning that slowly over time. And I even like did my first character animations in Daz Studio. So like my walking cycles, run cycles, like in that, which was like apparently a lot more difficult. It's not known for its like creating character animations. It's much more known for like creating the characters itself. So I feel like this was like a good way to get kind of started and going. But at this point, I'm not going to totally abandon this, because Daz Studio apparently can, export into Blender and other places, and then Blender can integrate with Godot. So ideally, like my workflow may be something like Daz Studio to Blender to Godot, but we'll see how that goes. We'll see if this actually sort of maintains being a part of the creation sort of workflow or not. But I'm going to have to. Probably the most painful part of this is I don't have a ton of experience with Blender, but so for me, I'm going to try to. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But basically, Blender is going to be required for like animation tweaking and generating character animations and things like that to import into Godot. So this may be the most painful part just for me, just because I don't have enough experience with it. But so I'll have to be doing some learning on that. But there's enough assets that I can use to sort of minimize my exposure to this, and so that it's not so much of a bottleneck for me, and that I can just focus on, getting assets into Godot as efficiently as possible. So we'll see how this goes. But this is my first video on this. It's very long. I expected to do like 20 minutes, and it's almost an hour. But I think it's worth covering this stuff, and I think I've covered quite a bit of it. Other tools that I have available at the moment are sort of Affinity Photo, which is a alternative to Photoshop, and to edit and customize some things, which I've been doing with objects and things that I've created in Daz. And kind of try to keep it simple, I guess. So I think that's it. So I'm just really at this point, I've actually made the decision, and that's been the hardest part. And now I'm just excited. Like, I'm just excited about Godot. I've been watching Godot tutorials. I've been following along and doing some of the tutorials on just creating different things to place in scenes and things. And oh man, I'm so excited. So I'm probably going to start to upload YouTube videos again. We'll see. I don't want to make promises, but like the idea is that like I can upload these type of videos to showcase like what I'm learning and where I'm at in the process of making a game with Godot. And I think that's basically going to be the focus of my channel, probably moving forward, period. I think I've done enough minimalizing stuff in the past. Like before, I've done some minimalist content, but this is what I'm really excited about. It's hard to say how excited I am, because I went from like a deep level of frustration of not knowing which direction to go into to being super excited about Godot. I'm absolutely I cannot wait to dig in and just get going with Godot. So that's it. That's my choice. Hopefully this is helpful for folks, entertaining in some way. And I'm going to upload this now. Let me know what you think. Take care.